1.
Good morning. Today we start Unit 3, Day 2, solving one-step inequalities. Solving inequalities with addition and subtraction. We solve an inequality in one variable in the exact same way that we solve an equation in one variable. Like an equation, an inequality must be solved by undoing operations until the variable is isolated on one side. Difference between equations and inequalities, though, when you find the solution of an inequality, it is graphed on a number line. Example 1. Solve the inequality and graph the solution. The inequality, x minus 18, is greater than or equal to 20. Notice that x is the variable on the left side of the inequality. So our first step, we have to undo the left. We'll undo it by adding 18 to both sides. So here's the inequality once again. Again, our goal is to get the x over here to be by itself, so we'll add 18 to both sides. And we end with x is greater than or equal to 38. Now, since this is an inequality, it has to be graphed. That's step 2. We're going to graph our solution on a number line. Since it is equal to, we'll start with a closed dot on 38. And we shade the number line for all numbers greater than 38. Since all of our x has to be greater than or equal to 38, so we shade to the right of it. And it looks like this. Here's our number line. We can number it however we want, just be consistent. So I numbered mine by 1s. Close circle on 38 because it is equal to, shaded to the right. And thus, number 1 is done. Let's take a look at example 2. Solve the inequality and graph the solution. Again, the first thing, find the variable. The variable's on the right side of the inequality this time. So since x is on the right side, we'll undo everything from the right side.
Ms. Gerber's room. Jarrett Montgomery, report to Mr. Gerber's room.
So we'll subtract 27 on both sides and get the answer of negative 8 is less than x. Step 2, we have to graph the solution. It's an open dot on negative 8 because, as you can see, when that goes away, we're not equal to. Since the variable is not on the left side of the inequality, we shade the opposite way it's pointing. Notice when I say pointing, look at your inequality symbol. If you think about that like an arrow, right now our inequality is pointing to the left, but since our variable's not on that side, we're going to shade the opposite way. So again, here's our number line. Pick a scale that's consistent. I chose 1s. My open dot on negative 8. Negative 8 has to be less than x. Remember, it's alligator eats the bigger numbers. So negative 8 is less than negative 7, negative 6, etc. So we'll shade that way. And example 2 is complete. Now, when we do inequalities with multiplication and division, when solving inequalities involving multiplication and division, we see the difference from solving equations. Remember, when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you switch the sign. For example, 8 times negative 5 is negative 40. 8 starts out as a positive, but when we multiply it by a negative, we switch the product to a negative sign. Negative 27 divided by negative 3 started as a negative. Since we divided with a negative, we changed to a positive. That leads us to this. When you solve an inequality by multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative number, you have to reverse the inequality symbol. The only difference between solving an equation in solving an inequality is this. When you do multiply or divide by a negative number, you reverse the inequality symbol. Let's look at an example and see if we can explain. Solve the inequality and graph the solution. 5x is less than or equal to 30. Step 1, variables on the left-hand side being multiplied by 5, so we're going to divide both sides of the inequality by 5. Just like the equation separates it into two sides, the inequality symbol separates it into two sides. So 5x is less than or equal to 30, dividing both sides by 5, x is less than or equal to 6. Step 2, we do have to graph the inequality. Close circle on 6 because it is a solution, because it's equal to. Variables on the left side of the inequality, we're going to shade the way the inequality is pointed, all numbers to the left of 6. So here comes our number line. Close circle goes to 6, shading everything to the left. And thus example 3 is done. Take a look at example 4. 36 is less than negative 4x. Divide both sides of the inequality by negative 4. X is sitting here on the right-hand side of the inequality. We have to undo everything that's on the right-hand side. 36 is less than negative 4x. We're going to divide both sides of the inequality by negative 4. Here's that twist. Because we're dividing both sides by a negative, the inequality that was less than will be flipped over and become greater than. Negative 9 is greater than x. Since we divided both sides by a negative, we had to flip it. Step 2 will be the same as always. We're going to graph the inequality. Again, it's an open circle on negative 9 because it's not a solution, because it's not equal to. Should say not there, I messed that up. Since the variable is not on the left side of the inequality, shade the opposite way that the inequality is pointing. Right now, our inequality is pointing to the right, if you will, but the variable is not over here on the left. The variable is not over here on the left-hand side, so we're going to shade the opposite way. Number line, numbered by ones. Notice that on all my number lines, I've not shown a 0 yet. You don't have to show 0 on your number line. Pick it so where it fits in. Here comes my open circle on negative 9. Oops. That should actually be moved over to negative 9, not on negative 10. It should be here. Even though it's pointing to the right, the variable's not on the left side, so I'm going to shade the opposite direction, and we get the answer. Example 5. Again, we're going to solve the inequality and graph the solution. X divided by 4 is greater than negative 8. Again, step 1 is to solve it. X is on the left-hand side being divided by 4. So we're going to multiply both sides of the inequality by 4. So multiplying both sides by 4, it'll cancel it out of the left side, leaving us with just x. X is greater than negative 32. Now, notice that we're multiplying a negative number here, but we're not multiplying by a negative on both sides. That's why the inequality didn't reverse. What we do on both sides has to be negative in order for us to reverse the inequality. Just because we're starting with a negative number doesn't mean we have to reverse it. We multiply by a positive number, we don't have to reverse. Step 2 is a graph, of course. Open circle on negative 32 since it is not a solution because it's not equal to. Variables on the left side of the inequality, as you can see over here. So we shade the way the inequality is pointing. It's pointing to the right. Think of it like the end of an arrow. So here's my number line. Scaled by ones, that should be negative 31. I had a little typo this morning. Open circle on negative 32. Shaded to the right. On the last slide, on your own, in your notes, solve each inequality, graph the solution. and I'll be around to check your notes.